Today what we're doing is called economic integration. Economic integration is when we say that economies are becoming more interdependent and are forming trade agreements with each other. Can we settle down please, everyone? People at the back. So what do we mean by What do we mean by economic integration? So I wrote here this, that economies are becoming more interdependent and are forming trade agreements with each other. These trade agreements allow more trade among members and less trade among non-members. So the non-members would be not part of the trade agreement and they will have a lower trade because the members are now increasing trade with each other. There are many examples of trade agreements. We'll talk about that today. But all of this is called economic integration. The countries are integrating with each other and form agreements with each other. So, there are four forms of kind of trade agreements that we're going to look at. The first one is what we call free trade area. The second one is what we call custom union. The third one is what we call common market. And the last one is what we call economic and monetary union. So these are the four forms. Also we can call them 4 degrees of integration, because as you move from here to here, the integration is becoming more and more stronger. So what do we mean by this? Let's talk about this each. The first one we talk about is what we call free trade area. Sure. In a free trade area, basically what we say is that countries in free trade area allow free trade with each other member of the agreement, but different trade policy can be with non-members. What do we mean by this? Let's say there are 3 countries, A, B and C, and they all form an agreement with each other. So there is a free sort of trade area, which means A, B, C, they will, let's say when they are part of free trade area, there will be no tariff between A, B, C. A will not put a tariff on B, B will not put a tariff on C, and so on and so forth. But let's say there's a country D. There is a possibility if there's a country D which is non-member, you could have B put a tariff on this guy, while C may say, you know what, I have still free trade. So you could have a different external trade policy. So your external trade policy don't need to be same. Which means that let's say if Pakistan says this, that I'm going to put, let's say, a tariff on India, but Sri Lanka says, you know what, I'm going to have free trade, that's allowed as long as they are in free trade area. So you could have a different external trade policy, but you don't have any trade restriction on each other. So in a free trade area, there is no trade barrier restriction with the members, but non-members ke saath you could do any kind of agreement. There is no condition that I'll put on you. Makes sense? Then comes your after trade free trade area comes your custom union. In a custom union, we say basically it's free trade area plus common external trade policy. So for example, if I have two countries that are part of custom union, let's say country A, country B, and let's say country C. Now they're part of custom union. I'm going to make a line like this. All three countries will not put a trade barrier among each other. But let's say there's a country D which is not part of custom union, the non-member, you will have a common external trade sort of barrier, if it's a barrier, or trade policy is a better word to use. Trade policy. For example, you could put what we call a tariff. So all the countries will have no trade barrier with each other, which was free trade area, but at the same time, this one is more stricter. You have a common external trade policy, which means you're putting a tariff or a quota or even like free trade, whatever the policy is, it has to be a common policy. It can't be possible that say that A says I'm going to put a tariff and B says I'm not going to put a tariff. A, B and C all have to then put a tariff on D because they're part of your custom union. So after custom union, so we have free trade area, custom union, and then comes the third one, which is called a common market. In a common market, we say it's more stricter than your or more integrated than your custom union. So that's why we say it's custom union plus a few more things. Number one, free movement of goods and services plus free flow of capital. You could, if you are part of one country, you can easily invest in another country, plus your free flow of factors of production. Example, labor. So if you are part of the common market, a good example of common market is European Union is a part of common market. If you're part of common market, for example, an Italian can work in Spain, Spanish guy can work in Italy. Do they need work permit? And the answer is they don't need any work permit whatsoever. A common market is such there is a free flow of labor where people can work from in one country or another country without restriction. If I'm a producer, I'm selling, for example, water in one of the markets. Can I sell in another market? And the answer is yes. Nobody is going to stop me because we're part of common market. A good example of common market is the European Union, where there is no restriction of people flowing from working from one country to another or setting up a factory probably in another country and so on and so forth. So there is no restriction whatsoever. Last one is basically what we call economic union. Economic union and monetary union. So in an economic union and a monetary union, basically what we say is just that not only you have a common market, which was there, but at the same time you might have what we call a common tax policy, which is where like all your direct taxes and indirect taxes will be similar, which means basically what we call fiscal policy, but also sometimes you have what we call common currency. So like if you look at Eurozone is a monetary union where everyone has a one single currency, which is euro. Make sense? So you have what we call common currency means, let me write this, that this means, saying here is this, that this means that there is a common fiscal and monetary policy. Fiscal policy is policy on taxes, because your taxes are the same. Also your laws and regulations are the same. Let me write this, that the laws and regulations are also the same on product and pollution, etc. So you have the same fiscal and monetary policy, same currency is being followed. Your central bank is the same because of course you need the one single bank to issue let's say euro. उसके साथ साथ आपके laws and regulation भी same है. For example, अगर आपने कहा कि यार ये safety standard है for a car, then everyone has to follow that safety standard. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि Chinese, Spanish car would have a different safety standard, and Italian car would have a different safety standard, a French car would have a different. Everyone would have the same standard, same pollution sort of rules, same labor laws, and so on and so forth. All of this would mean that like you're completely like a same country. A good example of this could be when you look at, sometimes people give example of United States of America. United States of America has different states. All states are working together when it comes to all laws. Everyone has the same bank, the Fed, for example, and the laws are the same. You might have some slightly different state laws about something or the other, but the federal laws are the same about most things which is common for the states. Can you work, if you are born in New York, can you work in California? And the answer is yes. It's one single country for you because all of these states have now integrated into United States of America. Make sense? So that's the example of an economic union. Monetary union क्या बनती है जब आपके पास similar currency भी हो जाए. Like for example dollar, or for example eurozone में the currency is also the same. And because of that, your tax would be also, your central bank will also be the same. Make sense? Okay. Now, so we want to look at two impacts of economic integration. So when we write economic integration, we want to look at integration. We want to look at two kinds of sort of impact. One is what we call a good impact, which is called trade creation. Another one is what we call a bad impact, which is called trade diversion. You want to know basically both of these to know your impact. Trade creation. So let's write trade creation. This is where trade moves from a from a high cost domestic producer to a low cost foreign producer. Let me give you an example. Let's say Spain is buying shirts from Italy, okay, and puts a tariff of $5. Okay, so price in sort of Spain is, let's say, $10. Price in Italy for those shirts is, for example, $7, but you put a tariff of, for example, $5 to make 7 plus 5 makes it 12. So you put a tariff of, which means after tariff your price is 12. Who will you buy from when you put a tariff? And the answer is Spain. Spain will basically buy from its own domestic producers. Isn't that true? But if now they form a trade agreement, after, for example, let's say after free trade area, the tariff is removed. When you remove tariff, what will happen now? The price will fall to $7. Who will benefit from this? Who are the parties that will benefit? Number one, consumers in terms of lower price and higher consumer surplus. Consumer surplus will go up, right? So if I make a diagram like this one, guys, look at this. When you remove tariff, let's say this is demand supply. Let's say before tariff your price was like $12. Okay? But after tariff your price is, for example, Price before is like $12. Price after is like 12 minus 5, which is $7. So what happens to my consumer surplus? Before price, let me write this, with tariff and without tariff. Without tariff, you are importing Q4 minus Q3. With tariff, you're importing Q2 minus Q1. Consumer surplus पहले आपका था A, B, C. But when your price goes down, your consumer surplus will now go up by this region. Remember this area 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, it will come back to us. This is what we call trade creation. When you remove tariff, consumers will benefit in terms of cheaper good, therefore higher consumer surplus. A. Number 2, who else will benefit? International producers will benefit in terms of more imports. And number 3, as we learned in our older discussion, that there is also going to be a benefit to your the more imports are happening in the country, right?
But
so yes.
Producers are those who are producing in Italy or those who are importing from Italy?
So international producers are those who are exporting to Spain, but in terms of more imports that are happening from Spain. What you're saying is the same thing. Or you're saying international producers like Italy, I can write this. International के बजाय पे let's write this. The more pertinent term could be writing international के बजाय let's write this. Italian producers. Right? Italian producers will benefit in terms of more imports. And number 3, who will benefit? Your third party that will benefit will be your basically higher efficiency as more efficient foreign producers are producing more. Got it? So the advantage of what you call your trade creation is this, that a high cost domestic producer is now producing less and a low cost foreign producer is producing more. Trade diversion is a little complicated. Trade diversion is basically when trade moves away from a low cost foreign producer to a foreign non-member producer to a high cost to a high cost foreign member producer. So that's a little complicated. You have two foreign producers, one is member, one is non-member. So let's say same scenario lete hain ki let's say there is a market for shirts and let's say previously the price from Italy was $7 plus you had a tariff put on this one 5, 7 plus 5 makes it 12. Okay, but price from Thailand, for example, is $4. 4 plus 5 makes it 9. But price in Spain is $10, and of course there is no tariff, so the price is ultimately 10 because Spain is your domestic producer. Are you all with me? Who will you buy from if you had no agreement with any country? If if you had no agreement with any country, Thailand was the best producer because Thailand was better than even your domestic producer. So you will buy from Thailand because 9 is better than 10 and 12. Now,
So, but what about the cost of
so everything included, transport वगैरह सब मिला के. Now Spain forms custom union, CU for custom union with Italy, which means that no tariff on Italy, but tariff on Thailand will remain. So you keep on putting a tariff on Thailand. So what happens is basically you remove this. Let me use another color. You remove this, the price will now be 7. Isn't that true? But now who will you buy from? Now you will buy from Italy because 7 is better than 9. Which means that what we are doing is that the low cost producer is Thailand. You are now moving away because 9 is more than 7. But if you put tariff on Italy, you will never buy from Italy. The fact that you remove tariff, the inefficient producer is now basically producing more. Who loses out? The consumer who can get the good for 4 is now getting it for 7. So basically, the government will lose out in terms of tariff as well because government ko mil sakta hai, but government will be like, you know what, they are also removing tariff on some of our other goods. But from a world perspective, we are moving away from an efficient producer, which is Thailand, to an inefficient producer who is now your member country. So that's why it's called trade diversion. Trade is diverting away from an efficient party to an inefficient party. Well, who's the efficient party? Thailand. But after tariff, it was not as competitive as Italy, which had the cost of $7. Does that make sense? I'm going to show you some exam questions which will help us understand all these concepts. So basically, this is what you call one. What is the characteristic of a custom union but is not of a free trade area? So in a custom union, what we say is that you have a no trade barrier with 2 countries and also common external policy with your non-member. In a free trade area, you have different external trade policy. Maybe policy with you and his policy with you will be completely different. So what is the characteristic of a custom union? D, a common external tariff. जो कि एक free trade area में क्या होता है? You don't have a common external tariff, you have a different trade policy. Make sense? A country joins a trade organization where the only requirement are that the members must have an identical tariff towards non-members and no trade barriers to fellow members. This means we are going from free trade area to custom union. Ultimately, you're going to custom union, which means the only answer is C, which is you are moving from a free trade area to custom union, because custom union says that identical tariffs with the non-members, and with the members you have no trade barrier whatsoever. A group of countries join together to form a single market with a single common currency. What is this called? It's called single market, single currency, it's economic union. Easy. What is found in an economic union but not in a custom union? Remember, economic union means there is more allowance between countries. What is economic union? Economic union allows free movement of labor and capital between member countries. Make sense? So there is not only common external trade policy, no trade barriers, but also people can move from one country to another, work from one country to another, and so on. So that's why this is the answer D. This one, guys, this says there's a particular good in Barbados market, so could be supplied by domestic producers for $1, by Trinidad for 0.85, or by USA for 0.75. Okay, now Barbados had the 20% duty on imports from Trinidad and the US. So I'm going to put a 20% duty now. I'm going to multiply this by 1.2. Right? 1.2 means add 20% more. So that would mean 0.85 times 1.2 is, anyone with calculator? It is 1.02, shabash. And what about 0.75 times? 0.9. Now, when you look at this, which one is the cheapest after tariff? US. Which one is the most expensive? Trinidad. And then comes your domestic producers are only $1. Okay? Barbados then form a custom union with Trinidad, which means they remove this tariff on Trinidad. Now the price is 0.85 from Trinidad. Barbados itself sells for $1, and these guys are selling for 0.9. From which country would Barbados import the good before the formation of custom union? Before custom union, who will you buy from? USA. After custom union, who you? Trinidad. Which means what concept is happening? Trade diversion is happening as the low cost producer, a non-member, is not allowed to trade, but a high cost producer is allowed to trade after the trade agreement or custom union.